In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Now we're going to talk about a meal. Because in the book of Genesis, you have the concept of covenant and meal. Covenant and meal. And you have the same concept in Exodus as well. Covenant and meal. Are you starting to see a coincidence here? At the Last Supper, when Jesus was at the meal of the Passover, he took bread and he said, "This is my body." He took the third cup of wine and he said, "This is my blood, the blood of the new and eternal covenant." Covenant and meal comes to a climactic fulfillment when Jesus establishes the Holy Eucharist. And that's why the concepts of covenant and meal are so important. God made two covenants with Abraham, Genesis 15 and Genesis 17. And so let's see how this concept of covenant and meal comes together in Genesis 18. Are you ready? And it says in Genesis 18, "And the Lord appeared to him by the oaks of Mamre. As he sat at the door of his tent in the heat of the day, he lifted up his eyes and looked, and behold, 3 men stood in front of him." This is one of the most mysterious scenes in the book of Genesis. God appears, but Abraham looks up, and there's 3 who stand there. This has actually inspired a lot of art. You may have seen artistic renditions of this meal where Abraham is sitting with 3 visitors. And if you look closely at this art, which is very popular in Catholic and Orthodox churches, the face on all 3 of them is the face of Christ. And it's trying to say something, that we know the Father and we receive the Spirit through the very person of Jesus. And so, obviously, this is not spelled out in Genesis. That doesn't get really spelled out until you get into the Gospels. But what I am trying to say is this is a very mysterious scene here in Genesis. God is there, and Abraham looks up, and there's 3 visitors. The narrative never explains it, though. It never explains it. It leaves the reader asking questions. And it's good to ask questions, by the way. We just must ask questions with faith, not with doubt. And so, my brothers and sisters, let's continue on. In verse 2 it says, "He lifted up his eyes and looked, and behold, 3 men stood in front of him. When he saw them, he ran from the tent door to meet them and bowed himself to the earth and said, 'My Lord, if I have found favor in your sight, do not pass by your servant. Let a little water be brought, and wash your feet, and rest yourselves under the tree, while I fetch a morsel of bread, that you may refresh yourselves, and after that you may pass on, since you have come to your servant.' So they said, 'Do as you have said.' And Abraham hastened into the tent to Sara, and said, 'Make ready quickly 3 measures of fine meal, knead it, and make cakes.' And Abraham ran to the herd and took a calf, tender and good, and gave it to the servant who hastened to prepare it. Then he took curds and milk and the calf which he had prepared, and set it before them. And he stood by them under the tree while they ate. They said to him, 'Where is your wife? Where is Sara, your wife?' And he said, 'She is in the tent.' The Lord said, 'I will surely return to you in the spring, and Sara your wife shall have a son.' And Sara was listening at the tent door behind him. Now Abraham and Sara were old, advanced in age. It had ceased to be with Sara after the manner of women. So Sara laughed to herself, saying, 'After I have grown old, and my husband is old, shall I have pleasure?' The Lord said to Abraham, 'Why did Sarah laugh and say, shall I indeed bear a child now that I am old? Is anything too hard for God? At the appointed time I will return to you in the spring, and Sarah shall have a son.' But Sarah denied saying, I did not laugh, for she was afraid. He said, no, but you did laugh. Now this is really a tough one right here. Talk about getting caught red-handed, right? But it reinforces the point. God will give this child to Abraham and Sarah. It will seem like the most impossible work. And every time they call his name, Isaac, come over here. Isaac, do this. Abraham and Sarah are going to think back to the moment that they laughed at God's plan. And they're going to realize how faithful the Lord is to his promises. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit.